All right, so I'll call the school board meeting into session at this time. I do want to provide you with some changes to the school board agenda. Recognitions. Added item 3.1, recognition of Mr. Ron Garriga, longtime director of campus operations, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, presented by Superintendent Mary Beth Jackson. Consent agenda, deleted item 8.18, multi-year lease of Avaya telephone equipment, AGC Networks, and instructional technology seat management, deleted item 12.1, CACI task order number 2-116, the district-wide Avaya Unified Communication System upgrade. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Seeing no discussion, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. So moving down to Section 3, recognition. Superintendent Jackson, you're up. Recognition of Mr. Ron Garriga, longtime Associate Executive Director, U.S. Campus Operations, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University Worldwide, presented by Superintendent Mary Beth Jackson. And I see Mr. Garriga, he's here.
Yes, he is.
Good, good, good.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome, Ron.
We come this evening, this is a sad, bittersweet recognition of Mr. Garriga. We have worked hard together through the good and the bad, the happy and the sad, but Ron, to me, is the type of person who puts everything he has into a program. And if you look at our Embry-Riddle program and our aeronautical program, it's exemplary. It makes me so proud, Ron, for our children to say that they participated in a program here with you.
Thank you.
And we've had to make some adjustments. We've had to, as they say, back up and punt from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
But never once did I hear you say, we'll just give up. Not once. And the thing that I like most about Ron is the fact that he has a beautiful wife, and she's here.
Amen. Amen. Absolutely.
He does, and she is his support and his backbone. But Ron is a gentleman. And what I mean by that is in his interactions with students, with colleagues, with business partners, you always see that classic gentleman interacting with us, and you don't see that a lot anymore. His word is his word, and it is his word. If he tells me we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And you know, it's a little sad to me, Ron, that you're leaving us, but I'm excited for you and what you're going to get to do.
Yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
my goodness, I don't know if I can read all this of what you are, but he is going to be the Associate Executive Director, U.S. Campus Operations, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University Worldwide. That means all the campuses in the United States will now fall under Ron and his leadership. That's quite something. Very much quite something. And Ron, I hope it doesn't embarrass you, but you're going to have to stand up here and tolerate this.
Okay.
I have asked a couple of longtime friends, people in the
Well,
community.
it depends on who they are.
Well,
We didn't talk about
It
that.
sounds like a politician.
two of my favorite people, two people I have worked with quite a bit.
Two of mine as well.
Wonderful people, just everything for workforce and workforce development. And ladies will get to go first. This is Mrs. Linda Sumblin. Many of you know Linda. And Linda, You can say whatever you want to about Ron.
Well, how long do we have?
Well, I'm sure Nathan's chomping at the bit. He has a few things to say as well.
Absolutely.
Please
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Superintendent.
Welcome, Ms. Summer.
Thank you, I appreciate it, and thank you for this opportunity. And Ron surely has been a true friend of the school board, but also the community as well. When Ron started with Embry-Riddle in 2008, after the program was established in 2004, he literally hit the ground running. And as the superintendent said, there is no for Ron. He's going to work around it within the parameters, Mr. McGinnis, but certainly make it work for the youth, and that's his passion as well, too. Ron gives freely of his time to help write grants and support the community. Ms. Gates and Ron and I have been asked a couple of times years ago to represent Okaloosa County and Embry-Riddle at the college board. Brian Barnes asked us to attend. It was a topic about E-cubed as far as education, employment, and economic development. And we went to that first session. They had scheduled us for 2 sessions. It was in Atlanta. And we were getting a little nervous about the attendance for the first one because the seats were just not filling up. And we thought, here we are with this great message from Okaloosa County, and everybody needs to hear it. So Ron, with his wit and his opportunity to solve things, downloaded Don't Worry, Be Happy on his phone, and he went out in the hall and played it. And he was like the Pied Piper, bringing everybody in to hear this wonderful information we were there to share. Well, the room almost filled up, we were glad to say, and I don't know if it was because they were thinking they were getting a good message or they just wanted to say, let's help this man out, obviously. But anyway, it was a great session. It was well received. The light bulb went off that the 3 partners need to work together for the common of the youth. Ron also is involved with the Career Source Okaloosa Walton Board, very active on that, and also, as Nathan will share, with the Economic Development TechMan. Under TechMan, there's 2 signature projects that Ron is greatly involved in. One is Techman Industry Day, which we had August 23rd, excuse me, Nathan, and Ron served as a panelist at that event. Educate the Educator +1 is a signature project that we're real proud of under the Okaloosa EDC, where the middle school, high school principals invite a teacher, administrator, or student to come visit employees, employers in the community to talk about job growth opportunity. Ms. Thrush was able to join us for the last one. Ron's always at those, very supportive, and at the last one he offered his facility for us to meet as well too. In addition to supporting the role at Embry-Riddle, he and his wife Robin and daughter Shelby are very giving in the community for youth. They work very closely with children in crisis and also the exchange program, the ACE program, that works with challenging youth that have a difficult childhood to give them the tools to be successful. So Ron, we don't look at you exiting Okaloosa County. That just can't happen. What we're going to do is outstation Ron to all these new campuses so he can share the word about the great things going on in Okaloosa County. Ron, thank you for the footprint that you leave here. You leave us in good stead, and not to worry about the transition. Don't worry, be happy.
All right. Well done.
Thank you, Ms. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Nathan Sparks with the Economic Development Council of Okaloosa County. It's a pleasure to be before you this evening to honor a dear friend and a wonderful colleague who I've now known for my 6 years, almost 6 years here in Okaloosa County. I can tell you, when I first met Ron, he said, we're going to be best friends. And, you know, it was a little disarming at first. I didn't even know the man, you know, but...
I don't have many of those.
But, you know, I clearly saw his passion from that moment. But, you know, Linda's told you all of, you know, the wonderful things that Ron has done in partnership with you all, in partnership with the district, in partnership with the EDC. I'm going to tell you a funny story.
Oh.
So this was about 4 years ago. We took a group of leaders from Northwest Florida over to Germany because obviously Airbus had just landed in Mobile, and the idea was let's go over and learn from Airbus and some of their suppliers about what we need to do as a region to be ready. And obviously the program that Ron has led is a great partner in that effort that we work with aerospace. And so Ron was very high on our list to invite to join us, and he was very quick to accept that invitation, as was Linda. And so we ended up with about 30 Northwest Floridians going over to Hamburg, Germany to this conference where all these high-level speakers were presenting, and we brought them in, and they took us to their facilities and whatnot. We were reminiscing a little while ago, as a matter of fact, about how they got us in this room that we swore was a sweatshop, and they sweated us out until we finally said, we cried uncle. But with all that said, the funniest story of it all was Ron apparently had a free couple of hours, and he and Linda and a couple other folks decided to go check out Hamburg. And so as they were checking out Hamburg, there was some sort of protest march taking place. And Ron, took note of the protest march. And Ron, for those of you who know him well, know he works hard, but he plays hard, and he keeps you laughing the whole time. So this is one of those instances. So Ron jumps into that protest march and starts marching along, and they're chanting in a foreign language, and we don't know what they were protesting per se. But sure enough, Ron was in there with them. So one day you may see headlines somewhere that Ron, in his new capacity, is a professional agitator. And just know it all got started in Hamburg, Germany. But in all seriousness, folks, you've heard the wonderful partnership that we've enjoyed with Mr. Garriga. He truly is one of my best friends, and that's not going to change. He's going to continue to be that Pied Piper and spread the good work that started right here in Okaloosa County and started right here with our Okaloosa Aerospace Academy. In fact, just last week I had a prospect in town, and I was texting Ron, I need some updated information about the Okaloosa Aerospace Academy, and he was Johnny on the spot to get me the information I needed. And that, I'll tell you, Ron, that information I think may just get us to that next round of negotiations. So when we know that's not going to, you're not going to not do that for me anymore, right? Okay, just making sure. But in all seriousness, it's my great honor to come before you all and to honor a great friend, Mr. Ron Garriga.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to ask his lovely wife, Robin, to join him this evening. And another person that's here who supports him 100% is our own CTE director, Miss April Branscombe. And April, would you like to come up and say anything? Well, come on. Just tell him how good he is.
Don't go.
We know Ron's amazing.
Yes, he
You don't have to say
is.
anything else.
Yes, you are. And we want everyone to have that opportunity.
I'm new to this position. He came on board, but he came on just barreling right through everything. And he's always been there to answer questions, to help us through anything that we've had questions about. He's there for the kids. He's truly passionate about what he does. And it's not just in education, it's every aspect of Ron's life. He's passionate about his family, he's passionate about his friends, but he is most especially passionate about the children. And we are going to miss him, but we're not, he's changing jobs, but he's not leaving us. So we appreciate everything Ron has done for us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Ron, I'd like to give you the opportunity to speak.
Ooh, I feel like I'm at my own eulogy or something. I feel like, am I sick and I don't know it or something? But I just want to say to the board, it has been a pleasure to work alongside you these past 8 years. I remember in 2004, the very first school board meeting that I came to, Rodney Walker was the hardest on me, and he challenged me to several things, and that was to offer a rigor quality program. Do you remember that, Mr. Walker?
Vaguely.
Yeah. I'm glad, because I thought maybe you had it in for me and I was going to prove you wrong. But I did raise my right hand. I remember doing that in a ha-ha manner and saying, I'll just do my best. And I just want you to know, I want you to continue, sir, ma'am, all of you, continue to support this program. We are doing great things at that academy. We are educating our youth in this community for our future workforce. So please continue to support this program. I'm not leaving the community. I will definitely be here alongside our new director, mentoring him to this new position, so we will not miss a beat. We haven't missed a beat so far. But I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It has been a complete pleasure and honor to be up in this position. And we have done some great, amazing things. The list can just go on and on. You know our success stories. I have appreciated the support that you give us each year to continue this program and this opportunity. Superintendent Jackson, it couldn't be possible without you. We've had some humps, but we keep kicking field goals and making touchdowns. So we're going to continue to do that, and it's just been my honor. And I'm very, very humble to have this opportunity to come before my colleagues and this school board and this school district who I love. My daughter is a great product of this community and this school education, and we are very proud to live here and be a part of that. So continue your hard works. I'm going to hold you accountable. And I do continue to ask you to please stop by and visit what we do have going on there. We have great new things happening. And real quick, I want to share with you that trip to Hamburg, Germany. Great things happened. That initial event allowed me to make the right connections, that we just broke ground in Mobile, Alabama at the Airbus facility and Embry-Riddle location because of that trip and the support that this community has given us. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like you, John, but you know.
Behind every great man is a great woman. I understand that. No,
Can we get a picture?
I'd like to have Dr. Hill join us as well.
Well, I thought, where is he? Come on up here, Dr. Hale. I am so sorry. I didn't even, I'm sorry.
Come get me.
But this is,
Rodney, you like me sorry.
I'm gonna take a couple, so just keep smiling. Thank you.
And I'm glad to know that I'm not sick and I'm not going anywhere and you aren't burying me. So
we're not burying you.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bye, Ron. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. All right, so Mr. McInnes, I'm showing about 6:15 here, so it's time for the public hearing.
Yes, sir.
So, board members, I'm going to go ahead and recess the regular meeting, and I'm going to convene the public hearing. So if you would please slide down to, I think it's item 17.1, if I remember correctly. Yes, 17.1. This is the public hearing for the adoption of a new school board policy 06-40 personnel investigations presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Is there anyone here tonight to speak to this policy? Mr. Early, I see you raising your hand. Would you like to come forward and address us? Mr. McInnes, would you provide Mr. Early with information regarding the...
Yes, sir. You have 4 minutes to make a presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Dr. White, it's been a little bit over a year ago when I first started coming to the board meeting, we were discussing these issues with the policies, investigations, and everything else that have gone on. Over that time, y'all have made a lot of votes. Y'all have made a lot of decisions. Y'all have made a lot of discussions. You've said a lot. I mean, you really have. Can either one of you tell me what this policy says or does? Because I'll tell you, for the life of me, after all your discussions, I don't see it. Florida statute 120, I think it's 120, gives y'all the ability to pass rules. Those rules carry the weight of law. This school board policy carries the weight of law. If you're going to sit there and pass a policy, why don't you pass a policy that does something? You have been discussing these issues about the plain and simple fact that things were done in the school district that you didn't know about. This policy doesn't tell y'all anything, doesn't require anything, doesn't give y'all anything, doesn't demand anything of the district personnel. Not a thing. We had discussions. I've had work groups. We've sat down and gone into length of this type of stuff as we rewrote the other policies, that we wrote the actual HR investigation procedures. When we sat down and we wrote those, they were written on the understanding there would be a policy that gave some overarching guidance and requirements to the school district. This doesn't do it. It's a year wasted, in my opinion, right now on this policy. A year. I sent y'all a police report yesterday. Before y'all got that report, did you know that in the Frazier investigations, where Farley did an investigation, the DOE did an investigation, and then the DCF, the Sheriff's Office, and the State Attorney's Office all did an investigation that y'all know about? Did any of you even know about the prior Sheriff's Office investigation that was called in by the principal on the hotline that created an investigation? Y'all never discussed it, never seen a report, never seen anything of it. It happened. Y'all didn't know about it. Every one of these that went across the board, y'all didn't know about it. There was no requirement for anybody to tell y'all anything, and this policy doesn't require anybody to tell you anything, give you anything, or report anything to you. Puts no controls into the system. None. Absolutely none. If y'all are going to be a school board, then I'd appreciate it if y'all would sit there and take a look at these things before and tell somebody what y'all need out of it, and instead of talking across the board like y'all do, and then when it comes up it says nothing. Absolutely nothing. You had a chance here, okay? And in my personal opinion, it's a failed chance. And it feels like a wasted year dealing with a policy for investigations from this school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Early. Board members, any comment or question?
I have a question. Mr. Early, you participated in the creation of this some, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any written suggestions about how we should do this to
I did.
avoid the issues that you just brought up?
I did. I gave them to Mr. McGinnis and Mr. Chambers. We sat there and had a 3-hour meeting on the subject.
Well,
And there is absolutely nothing in here.
anybody aware of those suggestions?
We met with Mr. Early to go over the investigative procedures and guidelines that we're drafting that we did bring back to the board. And there are some components in there that we discussed with him, a couple of changes we made based upon his recommendations.
Those are guidelines and procedures separate from policies.
That's correct,
Did I
yes, sir.
understand that
Yes,
correctly?
sir.
Okay.
And those came back to the board and were adopted and approved by the board.
Yes. There were notes and there were discussions at the time on that of what needed to be carried forward into an official policy. I still got my notes at the house. There's some oversight here, gentlemen, or school board members, excuse me.
Well, the crux
There-
of the matter is I don't think, after discussing with the attorney and me looking into it, truthfully, I think that what we've done is satisfactory and we're complying. You disagree. So all I know is one thing. Me personally, I think that what the attorney and the staff has done is more than satisfactory. I have no problem with it. You disagree with me. But we keep going over and over. And I hate to say this, but truthfully, I think the way we now have it is absolutely complying with all the requirements, all the laws and everything. And all I can say is if it's not, then I'd have to say you need to go your due somewhere legally. Otherwise, I mean, we just keep going over this and over. And I talked to the attorney at length today, and he's assured me that what we now have in place is more than adequate, completely in compliance with the law. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what I'm going by and supporting. And I hope the rest of the board will look at it as I've looked at it. Because, I mean, I've got to have faith in the staff and the attorney, and I've been assured that everything is in compliance. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all I need, and I'm perfectly satisfied. And I'd like for us to move on to other things.
Go ahead, Mr. Earl.
That's all well and fine.
That's it.
You're the board, you can do what you want to
Well,
do.
and I mean, but we just
But
keep
the-
beating it to death.
Can I
And
speak, sir?
It's now time to and if 3 members of this board agree with me, then what we've now done is what we're gonna live with. Now, if there's something we're not doing in compliance with the law or something that we need to be doing, then fine, somebody needs to come with proof and evidence of that, and this when this board will need to change. But at this point in time, I'm convinced that what Mr. McGinnis and them have done is completely adequate, and we're doing what we need to do. And I think that we just need to move on, and then if there's something we're not doing, then you need to be able to come and bring proof positive with some agency that tells us that we're not complying with what we should be complying with. And I mean, it's reaching the ridiculous point of we just keep going over and over. And so now, and truthfully, I don't know if we need to take any kind of vote, but now as far as I'm concerned, I'm perfectly satisfied with what the superintendent and the attorney has presented to us. Now, if anybody can show me why I shouldn't be, fine, but at this point in time, we've discussed this over and over, and we keep coming back to this, and whatever we do then ends up not being in compliance, but I think it is, and I've been assured by attorney, so we need to move on.
Chairman?
All right, how much time have we had here so far, Mr. McInnes, roughly? I mean, we're well past.
Oh, yes,
4
sir.
minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can
I'll
I
give
move
you a
on?
chance to respond. Go ahead, Gene.
All I can say is this is the first time this issue's been addressed. This is the first time this policy's been on the desk. You opened up for a public comment. I gave you a public comment.
And I responded, and let's move on.
Anything
you,
else?
sir.
All right, anything else, board members? Mr. Destin, would like to?
Oh, well, if you have more of a response, I'd be willing to listen to it. That's what you're here for.
There's a whole lot of response, but if these are your suggestions, your discussions. If you want to run all over what you've said for the last year and not give the public what you said you were, I'm fine with that. Public confidence in this board is at an all-time low. You need to understand that. People talk to me all the time about this. When you sit up here and you tell the public something from that side of the microphone, we remember it. We look forward to it. When you sit there and berate the fact that you weren't told about investigations, we remember that. And I will tell you right now that the policy you have and the procedures you have will not require anybody to give you any reports or any heads up or anything else. Just doesn't do what you said you're going to do. It's fine with me. If this is what y'all want to do, vote on it and go forward. But don't think that the public's stupid. Don't think that the public doesn't keep up with what y'all say. Don't think we don't understand what's going on here at times. We're not stupid. Whether or not y'all keep records of what you say from that side of the podium, we do. Especially when it's a public confidence issue. Especially when there's abuses going on that are not being reported to you. Especially when you've got the sheriff's office investigating child abuse in your schools and nobody told you. And here it is 2.5 years later, and that was the first time y'all knew that that investigation had taken place. You get what you pass. You really do. That's your choice. It's your board. But the public is watching. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Early. Did you need to hear more, or?
Well, I just wanted to have the opportunity to
Okay.
speak his piece.
Okay.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate it.
Anything else, board members? All right, so I'm looking for a motion to the policy that's on the agenda.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Bryant. Any further discussion?
Have a little discussion, Chairman.
Okay.
I'm willing to listen to the suggestions that Mr. Early has given to us, and therefore I'll make a motion to table this item to the next meeting so that we may look at the suggestions and decide whether they are appropriate to keep us informed on these issues.
Okay, so you need a second. You're asking to table.
Right.
Okay. All right, board members, I'm looking for a second to table the motion. This is not to discuss the motion. This is to table the motion.
To a time certain, next meeting.
Yes, sir. Looking for a second. One of the problems is, I'm afraid that we all understand that if there's a second, that ends any discussion.
I'm not quite certain. A motion to table to time certain, does that prohibit discussions, Mr. McInnes?
I don't think it's debatable. I mean, once you've made the motion to table, you need a second, then you vote on that.
Well, I'll change my motion to the proper motion to move it to the next meeting, which would be postponed to the next meeting. What would be the proper motion?
Well, there's a motion on the floor
Right?
to adopt the policy.
Correct.
So
And
I'll
we have
make
a second.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can make a substitute motion.
All right.
That would be voted on first under Robert's rules, I believe.
All right.
So the substitute motion is to move this item agenda item to the next meeting to give us time to contemplate the changes Mr. Early suggests, so that we can guarantee that we will be informed of investigations and other matters that we need to know about.
All right, so I will, do I need to pass the gavel to Mr. Destin? I'll second that motion for discussion and then for vote. Okay? Board members, any discussion of Mr. Destin's motion?
Well, I do now.
Yeah,
I mean,
I understand.
I believe didn't you make a suggestion on a policy that we were to be informed whenever there was?
Yes, sir. And I'm going to talk about that, but you
Okay.
certainly feel free to do so.
Well, and you know, I think that's in place already.
Yes, sir, it is. That's right. So I think the thing for me, and as we talk about this policy, and I'm not saying that it might not ought to be changed or rewritten in some way, but we do have an adopted school board policy that this school board will be informed when there are confirming investigations of child abuse, sexual harassment, etc. Mr. McInnes, is that correct? We have that policy in place
Yes, sir, and
now?
that was one of the early policy changes the board implemented in this matter.
And I'm a little familiar with that policy because I think, as Mr. Bryant has suggested, I'm the one that proposed it immediately upon discovering that these situations had occurred in the past. But if I understood Mr. Early's remarks correctly, I think what he is proposing is that we be informed of all investigations, even those that are unfounded.
I'm not sure if that's what Mr. Early is suggesting. I don't think it is, because that's not what I would support.
Okay? All right.
Now, so we can clarify the difference of what Mr. Early sees as a flaw in our policy we're about to pass. Mr. McGinnis, Mr. Early, can you explain to us what the flaw is? As the chairman has said, we have a policy that we had adopted earlier in this game.
Yes, sir. You have that policy, and that is for any confirming investigations that you do. That would not have provided you any notification that the sheriff's office was in your schools doing an investigation. That's a confirming HR investigation only. That's all y'all passed. Currently, all you have passed is a current HR investigative procedure. There is no policy for your investigations. As a school board, you don't have a policy for the investigations. You've got a HR procedure that we worked on. It's very comprehensive, but when we worked on that, it was with the understanding that at certain delta points in this, that the school board would be notified. That included all investigations, contractor investigations, sheriff's investigations, DCF investigations, and HR investigations. That's what the discussion was. What you currently have is if your HR does an investigation and it's confirmed, that is the only time you're required to be notified. If that's what you desire, that's fine with me. But that's not what you said you wanted. That's not what we've been working for the past year for. But like Mr. Rodney Walker said, it's getting long in the tooth, gentlemen. It really is. And, excuse me, ma'am.
All right, so Mr. McInnes, I guess the question I have concerning Mr. Early's input and Mr. Destin's motion is, can we compel other agencies to notify us of their investigative practices through our policy?
I don't think you can compel another agency to have to do that. I think that the question would be, you know, at some point at the district level, we would know if an agency were actually in a school, but we may not know if just because in the community they're investigating that it's
Or even
involving
what the
us.
subject is. That's
Or
right.
even if it's related to the school district
Right.
at all.
Well, I was referring to school employee and school action investigations, which is all we've discussed at all.
But we've
never discussed child abuse from the outside or DCF coming in for those.
I
It's a
understand.
different story, sir.
You're narrowing it, I get
Yes,
that.
sir.
But still, I guess at the conclusion of the investigation, the sheriff's department, for example, I don't know about DCF.
Neither one do. Y'all never received the report from either side. I validated that with the sheriff's office before I ever opened my mouth.
So the subject at hand then is we have a motion to consider additional input on this policy, and we have a second.
Well,
So,
I
go
haven't
ahead,
had a
sir.
chance to
No, please.
discuss anything, and I would like Mr. Chambers to address some of the statements that Mr. Early's made, because I don't agree with several of them, of what we are and aren't being given or provided, what we did and didn't know. At no time, to my knowledge, did the entire board state anything in regards to more than one particular case. And also in regards to some of his statements, we have certain obligations of what we can and cannot discuss in a public forum in regards to certain situations. But I would, if it's possible, for Mr. Chambers to come so the public can hear what we are provided through the HR department and what we are provided from other agencies, as we discussed.
And Superintendent, Mr. Chambers' approach, is that okay? All right, Mr. Chambers.
So first of all, there's a lot has been said here. So I do want to take a quick step back. If you go back about 6 months ago, we had an equity policy. Since that time, the board, Ms. Jackson, has taken some swift action. There's a complaints policy that has been drafted and adopted. We have investigative procedures that we brought before the board, and that has been implemented. We now do have a policy that is before you. When you think back to DCF and the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department, at one point there was not a lot of communication with the school board in terms of what was happening. Under Ms. Jackson's leadership, we have met with the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office. We've met with DCF, both of those entities who now also give us information as to what is occurring with their particular investigations. Anytime an investigation is now occurring, as each of you know, I email you all and let you know exactly what is going on, where we are with the admin leave, what is going on in terms of whether it's child abuse or other issues that are going on in the school district. The main emphasis of what I've heard so far, and I could be wrong, and it's great to have involved citizens, and I think we all appreciate that, but what I've heard so far is the board does not know what is going on. You've made it very clear to Mrs. Jackson, you've made it very clear to me that you want to know what's going on, and we've done exactly what you've asked. And we make sure that you know each and every time exactly what is going on. At the conclusion of investigations, if there are confirming reports that deal with disciplinary matters, you're informed. Once again, I go back to very much appreciate citizens giving input, very much appreciate citizens being involved in the school district. And I say this very respectfully of all involved. But to make a statement as though nothing has been done when a lot has been done over the last 6 months, I would respectfully disagree. Is everything perfect? Maybe or maybe not, but a lot of hard work has gone into this, a lot of hard work by each and every department, a lot of hard work by the superintendent, a lot of hard work by the school board.
Can you also add, I mean, you mentioned better working relationships as far as investigations go with the sheriff's office, with other law enforcement agencies, with DCF, but we also involved the Florida Department of Education and also received their input in as far as our investigative procedures and processes, correct?
Absolutely. When we created the investigative procedures, one of the different entities that we did go to was the Department of Education, absolutely. We now also have a system in place with DCF where if we have the need for certain knowledge, we have Ms. Maxey, who has the ability to email straight or call straight to DCF to get information, which also helps us out. Prior to that, prior to Ms. Jackson getting us the ability to have a meeting with the sheriff to see if we could come together more collaboratively, we had no idea what was occurring with DCF. So they do not let us know the particulars, but they do let us know whether a case is closed, whether it's cleared, and my understanding is that is statutorily. The sheriff's office, they do provide us information as well.
All right, board members, any other questions or comment?
One thing,
Yeah.
if I might offer this,
Yes, sir.
in the board's adopted investigative procedures and guidelines, there's a section it's under section 3, and it's common requirements to all investigations, but there's a part B that deals with administrative leave. And under the new procedures now, on every personnel agenda that comes to the board, you get a list of employees that have been placed on administrative leave.
That's right.
Well, by virtue of the requirement in this policy, there are different standards here now, depending upon the nature of an investigation, whether it's the Sheriff's Department or DCF, or just a district investigation for matters that might seriously impact district operations, different standards for either putting them on administrative leave or actually suspending the employee. In either of those situations, that has to come to the school board, so you would receive knowledge of those pending investigations through the fact that the employee might either go on administrative leave or might be recommended for suspension. So that's going to bring information to you in addition to the other policy, Mr. Chairman, that you drafted and proposed that directly gets knowledge about specifically dealing with things dealing with child abuse or endangerment of children.
And that's what I wanted to make sure the public understood, because I think it is the opposite of what Mr. Early stated. We are not only receiving information only on HR confirming investigations. That is not the truth. We are receiving on this agenda, on previous agendas, since we have made the request, we are receiving information on other investigations as far as the status of those investigations, whether it's an ongoing or open DCF investigation or an ongoing or open Sheriff's Office investigation.
All right, thank you, Ms. Thrush. Anything else?
I would
Mr.
also
Bryant?
reach out that Marcus does a good job of calling us too. He does call us when he sees something that serious. He does call us. So not only do we get an email, we do get a call from Mr. Chambers. So.
And at any time, we have the ability to meet with Mr. Chambers or members of his staff to review any documentation on any employee issue or investigative issue that we are concerned about. That happened prior to the changes that we've made, and it's still occurring after the changes that we have made.
Chairman, just for the record, I want to make sure that you guys understand, I'm not suggesting that the situation has not improved a great deal. It has, thanks to Ms. Jackson and the staff. I think Mr. Early is suggesting that we take a more comprehensive look at it. And the reason I make the motion to delay it till the next meeting is to allow us to take that more thorough look.
Where are we right now, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. We are considering Mr. Destin's motion.
Okay, let's re-clarify. Let's move on and vote on something.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
I got it, Mr. Walker. So what we're considering is Mr. Destin's motion to delay this, to gather more input for 2 weeks, and then it comes back to us as a policy.
Okay.
It may come back the way it is, or it may come back changed. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. And as I understand, the fundamental change would be the inclusion of other agency investigations. Is kind of
You
what I
second
heard.
that motion?
Yes, sir. So it's on the
Okay,
table.
so now we've discussed it, so now
Yep.
we're ready to vote.
We are.
Well,
Okay, let's vote.
I would just quickly add that this came up at a July meeting, if I remember correctly, and looking back through email history and the investigative procedures. So I guess I'm just questioning 2 more weeks. We've had 2 months to provide input onto this policy that's before us for a public hearing tonight. You know, and we've had Mr. Early's input. We've seen the policy as board members. So that's all I would like to add, that this came about from a discussion that we had at our July meeting. And the board requested that the staff work with Mr. McGinnis to create this policy. So if we had additional input or desires for this policy, I'm wondering what individual board members are going to add in this next upcoming 2 weeks if your motion passes that we haven't had the opportunity to provide since July.
Well, with all due respect, Ms. Thrush, we have public hearings so that the public can bring forth information to us that we may not have contemplated before, and we've just had a public hearing and we've had input. So whether or not we had policies that we'd already looked at, that's why we have public hearings.
Well, in all honesty, I had never considered external agency reports, not in the vein that the speaker spoke to.
Let's
So,
vote.
all right, so unless there's any further discussion, we need to go ahead and move forward. All right, all in favor of Mr. Destin's motion, please vote. All right, those opposed? All right, so Mr. Destin,
That one
our
failed.
motion fails.
It did.
All right, so I guess we're back to the original
We are.
motion for Mr. Walker, and that would be moving forward the policy as presented. So is there any further discussion about the policy being presented?
I will have just one moment, a brief.
Sure.
I will vote in favor of this because we always have the opportunity to amend it even at the next meeting.
And if I understand correctly, Robert's Rules of Orders, you have to be on the prevailing side to resurrect.
That's exactly correct.
Okay, so
You're
that
learning,
means,
Mr. White, you're
that
learning.
means even if I'm opposed to it, if I want to bring it back up, I have to vote yes. Is that right?
That's the way it works.
Okay. All in favor, let's vote. Carries 5-0. All right, thank you. All right, so let's close the public hearing and reopen the regular meeting. And we are now at public comment, so we got to scroll back up. And we're on 5.1. And so, Mr. Early, you filled out a couple of cards here. Now, that was the one on investigations. We spoke to that. And I have one here for a student. Mr. Early, would you come forward? Now, Mr. McInnes, I'm going to need some help with this one. This identifies a student by name. So where are we at with that kind of public comment?
Dr. White.
I understand. Let him.
We'd
let
like
him-
to table that one for now because Eric isn't here and Eric has a parent's release.
So, well, let's do it this way. So at this time, you're withdrawing this particular request?
Yes, sir, because Eric isn't here and he does have the parent's relief that, now,
Mr. Mitchell, we do have a release of educational records for Mr. Early's access to those that the parent granted.
Okay.
So I can't say that Mr. Early could not comment on those records since the parent released it, but it still doesn't necessarily mean that the school board or superintendent should be discussing a student matter in this session. Mr. Early clearly has the release from the parent.
we can withdraw that one for now, sir.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
So we'll withdraw that one.
Yes, sir.
And moving to the third one that you filled out is, this is also concerning public records request.
Yes, sir.
Okay? You have 4 minutes.
I can do this in less than that.
Okay.
All right, another one of these issues. Sheriff's Office sent me some records. Okay, they responded to a record request for a specific issue, and within that were 700 of your records that we had just requested, and I wasn't provided. And that's what I sent y'all yesterday as well. 700 emails, about 24 extra documents, after Mr. McGinnis and Eric looked through these same ones. These are on the Frazier investigation. 700 emails were given by the Sheriff's Office by HR. at the same time that my request was in, the very same time. They were given maybe 900 records more than I was provided on the same request. It's just information for you. Bottom line, there's problems here. Eric can tell you right now that he's got a list of records that are supposed to be in your files that aren't there. He can't find them, doesn't know where they are. Okay? And that includes emails. Emails that are clearly referenced in police reports, no longer in y'all's system. Okay? Makes Eric's job very difficult. When he requests information and he can't get it, and even when y'all do a review of it and they come back to me and explain to me exactly where those other records were, now in that same record category, there were 700 emails provided to the Sheriff's Department that we were never told about. That was the police reports that I sent y'all yesterday.
Were those emails via the OCSD system, through the school district system, email accounts?
Apparently, yes, sir. They were a subpoena. They were provided in response to a subpoena on Mr. Frazier's investigation. Subpoena came through the
But these
state
were
attorney.
emails that were resident on our system?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actual excerpts of them are in the emails that I sent you. The investigator actually cut and pasted the email into his reports. So, yes, sir. And it clearly lists in there 700 emails. I talked to them, and they confirmed that that's what they have. I've talked to the state attorney's office on the same things, and that's what they received.
And they received those from who?
Well, the board has dealt with that, with the fact that, assuming this has happened, you do remember that we all agreed and just hired an extra individual that's on correct all
Right.
that, if that's true. So if that happens to be true, this board has now taken action, and Mr. Destin, you made the motion, so we're doing all we possibly can, and assuming that happened, and it was the fact that for whatever reason we was not able to provide those things, or they disappeared, we're now have put in place something that hopefully that will not happen again, which should hopefully let you realize that we are trying to correct whatever reason as those records disappeared. We're going to make sure it don't happen again, and this board is taking action to assure that. Is that not correct, board?
Any comments, board members?
Could we just,
Go ahead.
I would just ask staff to explain to us where we are in the process of trying to beef up our public records abilities.
Thank you, Mr. Horton.
Yes, sir. Eric's not here this evening, but I can respond to that. Two areas that the board has authorized us to go forward with. One of them is a position and job description for a records technician. I think is scheduled to be approved at the October 8th meeting, at which point we begin to hire, look to hire that position. That person would be tasked with working directly with our director, Eric Mitchell, on fulfilling records requests. The second piece that's been put in place is a software program that is for housing records requests that will help track and document outside of spreadsheets that are self or internally created in terms of the timelines of satisfying records requests. So it's a product that the district has purchased that will allow us to keep accurate, complete records on the status of public records requests.
What have we done, though, to make sure that the records themselves are not misplaced or lost, which seems to be the case now on 2 episodes? We
Well-
sent them to other agencies, and then when they're requested by Mr. Early, we say we don't have them.
Well, I think Mr. McGinnis has spoken to at least some of the situation that Mr. Early is speaking to at this point in time.
Let me clarify this, that the review that the board asked me to do after that one meeting when Mr. Early had gotten his responses from the state attorney and DOE, we went in to review the records he had received from Florida DOE and from the state attorney, because at that point in time there was a concern that some of those documents weren't still in the files. I did not go in looking for another 700 emails somewhere. I went in to try to confirm that records, at least in those 2 requests that he had received, whether or not we still had them, and I've reported twice to you publicly about that and provided you a review memo about that. So I can't address the 700 emails because I wasn't looking for 700 emails. I was trying to be sure that those notebooks Mr. Early had gotten, he deserved an answer to that question, and we got that for him. But I can't address this latest issue.
And I understand that, but this seems to be a new episode of the same issue, that we didn't provide records to Mr. Early, but we provided them earlier to another agency, and so where did they go? How is it that we don't know where they are anymore? That seems to be the real crux of the problem.
And I will say this, I don't know that it would be true to say that they're gone. I'm just not sure if they were accessed for the public records request or not. I mean, my understanding, and I'm not a technology person, but Mr. Horton might confirm this, my understanding is that if the email was sent on the district system, even if someone in an office tried to delete an email,
it should still be there.
It's on the server, so it's not, it shouldn't be gone. I mean, so I'm not suggesting anybody try to delete anything, but I'm just saying our system would have it. I mean, if it was an email in our system, my understanding is the server's got it. It's not gone.
And that's my understanding too. The question is, how come it wasn't provided?
I think it would. I'm answering for people that aren't here, but I can only say that it could be just in a reading of the request and a reading of the subpoena, and maybe they were interpreted two different ways. I don't know, and I'm not committing to that, but I'm just saying it could simply be in the way that the responses were put together.
Okay.
I don't know.
And I would just follow up with Mr. McGinnis is saying regarding the emails themselves in our exchange system. They're there, deleted from your deleted. They're still there and obtainable.
We have backups also.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But tonight would be the first time, and he may have spoken with Eric, but I haven't heard of this number of emails or something missing. So I'm sure we'll be happy to look into it and get with Mr. McGinnis and report back. But he's correct also sometimes that it may not be the case in this particular instance, but sometimes the way that records are requested makes a result different for one than the other. Again, may not be the case here, but sometimes that happens.
Anything else then?
Nope.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Mr. Horton.
Yes, sir.
You done, Mr. Early?
Well, as far as the records themselves, you know, when this comes up, I'm going to let you know. I really am, because this is a problem. You know me, I'm letting you know the issue exists. I'm not coming up here complaining to you. I'm telling you what's going on, and that's it. As far as the emails, there is one, okay, and it was requested by the sheriff's office. It was never provided to them. It came back in for a second request under subpoena. It was never provided to them as well. Eric can't explain where that one went. It's actually excerpted in Mr. Farley's report, copy and pasted, but that one doesn't exist in your system anymore. Confuses Eric, confuses the sheriff's department's investigators when they look for it. And that one is still there. I'll send you Eric knows which ones I'm talking about. That's why I'm saying Eric's not here, so it's not really fair to him to discuss this in that length. But as I said, the sheriff's office report to me identified that another 700 emails were provided, and documents, about 24, were provided to them for the same request that I had at the same time. We're not referring to things months before, months after. These were concurrent requests that were running. And it's just some observation and information for you, okay? Because I will say that Eric and Mr. McGinnis did a great job with the other review, but the thing about it is, it keeps coming up. You know, I'm not the guy that's going to run down and file a lawsuit. Y'all know that about me already. I'm not the guy that's going to pick up the phone and call and make a complaint. That's not what I'm here for. But when these issues exist, y'all need to know about them. And this isn't a minor issue. I mean, it really isn't. This is a pretty major issue. But it's information for you. And that's what I came up to give you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Early. All right, well, there's no other comment. Let's go ahead and move forward now. On Section 6, we have no administrative personnel appointments. Section 7, we covered at the workshop, and that's out-of-county travel. Consent agenda. So I'm looking for the
Move
approval. Okay, motion by Mr. Walker,
Second.
second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion?
Chairman, I
Yes, sir.
think 8.4 was one you had questions on. That was the revision of the extracurricular activity eligibility. If you'd remove that one, just so we can talk and make sure there are no other
All
questions.
right, so we're gonna
8.4.
pull 8.4. All right. All right, is there any other discussion about consent agenda? Looking for a motion.
Move it.
Motion to, motion by Mr. Walker, second by Mr. Bryant, to approve the consent agenda sans item 8.4. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Carries 5-0. All right, so sliding on down now. So now discussion is going to be section 10. So first we'll cover section 9, and that's the superintendent's human resources recommendations. 9.1 would be employees on administrative leave, presented by Mr. Chambers. And this is an example, Ms. Thrush, I think, of what you were talking about, where we get this information regarding these employees from Mr. Chambers and his folks. So this, of course, is an information item. There's no motion required. 9.2, Deferred Retirement Option Program, DROP, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction. And again, this is for information. There's no motion required here. Now, 9.3, this is an action item. Cleared certification requirements and issuance of contracts for the 2018-2019 school year, presented by Ms. Karen Peak, Program Director of Professional Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.4, out-of-field report for the 2018-2019 school year, presented by Ms. Karen Peak, Program Director of Professional Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Vote carries 5-0. 9.5, personnel recommendations, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.6, employment separations, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Ms. Thrush. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.7, employee transfers, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for
Move it.
approval. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Ms. Thrush. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.8, reinstatement reimbursement of sick leave and due to line of duty illness, injury, medical examination, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the
Move it.
Superintendent. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Ms. Thrush. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.9, leave without pay, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for
Move it.
approval. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, let's vote. Vote carries 5-0. All right, so that now takes us to discussion agenda. And Mr. Destin, you requested that item 8.4 be removed to discussion for a separate vote. So board members, you might want to scroll back up to 8.4. 8.4 is the request to advertise a public hearing for the revision of School Board Policy 04-17, extracurricular activity eligibility and participation guidelines for middle school students, presented by Mr. Andy Johnson, Director of Student Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for
I
approval.
move it. We need to get it on, go ahead and move, I move it.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Ms. Thrush. Okay. I guess now would be the point to have discussion. All right, Mr. Destin,
It
go
would
ahead.
be. But you brought up the question about whether grades and other things could be waived by this policy, and it appears they could. And I'm not so sure that's a good idea. Does anybody else have any questions about the policy?
I wasn't at the workshop on Thursday, but I did watch the video of the workshop and appreciate the discussion board members had. I think it's difficult to write a policy for every possible instance. And so my understanding of, or the reasoning behind this change to the existing policy is to have a procedure for appeal, just like our high school students do. And currently, because we have chosen as a district to continue to provide middle school sports, but to continue to do that through our MSAC committee, we don't have an appeals process. And this process is modeled after the high school appeals process by FHSAA. So while I share board members' concerns that were discussed at the workshop on Thursday, I think the way that the superintendent and staff have recommended the appeals process still allows for oversight based on the approval requirements for that appeal. I was thankful that the administrator from that student school who's requesting the appeal would be part of that decision, because I think that's important to provide background information if needed as part of that decision making. But there's a variety of issues that come up. We unfortunately have children who suffer illnesses that require them to be out of school, where they might have started a season and then had to leave school and might want eligibility to be reinstated because they didn't get to finish out that season. So in my opinion, the way the process is modeled, I'm in support of it.
All right. Anyone else have any comment?
Let's vote.
All right, well, I'll just say I intend to vote against this policy because my concern is concerning the board policy regarding age. And my understanding, if I'm correct, Mr. McInnes, this policy would allow that age policy to be waived should this committee vote to do so. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that'd be correct.
All right, and that's a big exception in my mind, and it may be just because I'm old, and I remember how we've done it for so long that we've had an age requirement, and that was board policy. And this new policy would allow a group of our employees basically to supersede school board policy. So, and for those two reasons, I intend to vote against this policy.
And Dr. White, if I understood from the conversation you guys had on Thursday, that's the policy of FHSAA, for example, for high school athletics. They have a policy, and correct me, Mr. Johnson, if I'm wrong, if he's still here.
He's here. He moved up front.
Yeah, he moved, sorry. I'm looking for you in that back corner. They have an age policy that you can't be a certain age in high school. But then there is an appeals process.
Right.
And we've had issues with that age policy that FHSAA has. And sometimes there's an appeal and it's granted, and other times there's an appeal and it's not granted.
Most
Is that
of the
correct?
time.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no quibble with the policy. Our administrators feel strong about this policy. The initiative here is simply to implement a process through which parents who feel that they have a grievance with the current policy or have an extreme unique circumstance
that they might present an appeal to a body other than a public forum such as this. The superintendent, the district, and trust our principals to be strong-minded, strong-willed people that support the policies of this district, and we entrust them to support these policies. But under extreme circumstances, there may be an incident where an appeal could be granted. I don't know that I would see an opportunity for one to occur, but it would be nice to have a system in place if one did.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other comments or questions?
Well, just real quick,
Yes,
from
sir.
Thursday morning, I mean, I still think that what this particular, and I know the parents out here tonight, but to have some resolution for them at that particular time so they don't have to wait to come before a school board to appeal, and we have 11 administrators that, I'm like you, I trust them to make the best and right decision.
Yes, sir.
And this way, this particular incident, we don't have to wait until the end of September. Now we're making a decision on it, where it could have probably been taken care of back in July, or when it was brought up before, so when it would have come before the MSAC committee. So
yes, sir.
So I'm going to be voting in favor of this tonight.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bryan.
Just one comment, the extraordinary vote that's required, 8 out of 11, I think would make it pretty hard to do some things that probably we would consider improper. Let's not fool ourselves, though. We're not fixing the problem that we discussed several meetings ago, or even at last meeting, because this can't be in place in time to address that. So, but I'll still vote for it so that you do have a process.
And I get that part, and just having a little of experience in that area. At one time, Mr. Johnson, you might remember, I even served as president of that particular athletic conference. So, but again, I'll be voting against this. Okay? So I'm ready to call the question. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? 4-0. All opposed? 1. All right, very good. All right, so moving on to section 11, construction program owners, representatives, business. Mr. Walker, sir.
Just to let you board members know that we'll be meeting Wednesday to make a decision on what firm we'll be going with our construction contract, and probably be a couple of weeks. We'll get back with you with your recommendation. That's it.
All right, very good, very good. All right, section 12, information technology seat management, 12.1 deleted. We've covered that one already, board members. All right, Mr. Attorney, your business, sir.
No report tonight.
All right. Superintendent, your business, ma'am.
Thank you. I see Dr. Hale is here. I can tell you what I've been dealing with: air conditioners, football, fall festivals, homecoming. Air conditioners have been at the top of my list. We are working very hard. Some of them are 30 years old, and those chillers were not designed to last forever, Mr. Walker. So we may have to go borrow some fans from the churches, the way people used to fan. But I wanted to share something with you that I thought was very interesting, because I've been doing a lot of reading on sales taxes all over the state of Florida. People are really realizing that they have to do that to be able to function. And I started thinking about our district, and I started thinking about who we are. And one of the things that really stood out in my mind, since we started the rigorous testing that we now do, there are only 3 districts in the state of Florida that have made an A every year: Okaloosa, St. John, Sarasota. That speaks volumes. And I know people say, oh, it's just a test, it's just a test. Try taking that test, and you will see the rigor that is there for those children. The other thing that I was questioned about this week had to do with our administrative cost in our district. I asked Rita to prepare some data for me, because I just wanted to see where we fell in there in all of that. School administrative cost, which that means all of our administrators in the schools, it is 4.19%, and that is, now Rita, let me get this right, new revenue general fund dollars, because we can't spend the other dollars on anything, so it has to come from here. District administrative cost at the district level is 2.5%. Overall administrative cost in this district is 6.69%. That is very low. And I think Rita and I discussed it this afternoon. We're going to go out and do a little further research and look at where we rank. So I think it's important to note that we have great teachers. We have great administrators. And we're not above snitching them out of other counties if we can possibly get them, Mr. Walker. We've gotten a few here lately. But think about it. One of 3 school districts that have made an A consecutively and consistently out of 67 counties. It just makes me so proud when I look at that and I think about our students with our very low administrative costs. Mr. Johnson told me, I think he might have left, the other day they went to a meeting and we were supposed to bring all these people, these administrators, and they all had administrators for this and that, and there were like 12 of them there. And there sat poor old Andy in there with one other person, I think, because we just don't have that kind of staff. So I'm really proud of these guys because they make it work every week. They make it work every day. Just remember, when you hear the negative stuff and you hear people talking, what is it the kids call it, talking, what is that term they use, smack? Yeah, trash, smack. You just remember where we are. And we have 50+% free and reduced lunch. St. John's has about 20. And we still compete. So I just wanted y'all to hear that because I think it's important that we hear it every once in a while. Mr. Walker, we got raggedy buildings, but we've got great kids and great teachers and great administrators. That's all, sir.
All right, very good. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. All right, so now we're at board members' information and requests, but first of all, item 15.1. Designation of a school board member to serve, or members to serve as legislative liaisons and alternates on the Florida School Board Association Legislative Committee. And I know we were all so gratified because Mr. Bryant volunteered himself at the workshop on Thursday, but I think you had a conditional to that. What was that exactly? Was it?
I was asking if Mr. Destin would be the alternate.
And I will agree to be the alternate because I have faith that he will always show up.
And I will say we're already working on how we're going to present things in Tallahassee this upcoming session. So.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion then to make that appointment. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Ms. Thrush. Any discussion? Now's your chance. Okay. With that, all in favor, let's vote. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. All right, now we get to school board members' request and for information and announcements. So, Mr. Bryan, I'll start with you, sir.
Okay, well, first of all, Nicole, why don't y'all come on up real quick. Richburg is part of my zone, and it's great to have them here. They're going to do a little slide presentation. And also, real quick, while I was there today, they had Kevin Spencer, who was a magician, who was volunteering his time in doing a magical show. But in the meantime, the kids were also baking goodies for tonight's meeting. So.
We just wanted to come and show y'all. We appreciate so much that y'all decided to do our classrooms, and we wanted to show y'all a little bit of what the kids are doing because of the classrooms that y'all were able to build for us.
Okay, so I guess this is going to come up here.
It should come there for us.
Yeah. Okay, so board members have a TV down here that the audience can't see, but thank you.
We don't have Dustin or.
Well, Paul, I think Paul.
Well, you got Mr. Horton.
Here he comes.
There you
Looks like we
go.
got it going, okay.
There you go.
That's just a little bit. The kids, they enjoy it. We do the garden. We have a big open space now where there's a fence and they can stay in there. The classroom, our one classroom is huge, and we have 7 wheelchairs in there. They're all allowed to get down on the floor. They don't have to sit in the chairs all day. I would love for y'all to come see it. That's the only, I can't really explain anymore. I would just love for y'all to come see it, because just seeing the kids' faces, that's all I needed. That's all I needed. But our students did bake cookies and banana nut bread.
Oh my. Is Mr. Humphrey here?
Is this what you?
He may have left.
And these are just some of our pictures where they were building.
And I would also just like to comment real quick, Mr. Destin, a couple years ago, bought some equipment for, this is how
For
we're
the
making these
culinary,
goodies
yes.
tonight, so thank you, Mr. Destin. And the rest of the board, thank you for your support in getting this done. I think we were good stewards of taxpayer money, and we did it right. And like she said, I know most of y'all have been up there, take a peek at it. It's a really great facility that we've
And we're
accomplished.
going to
up there.
grow, and they have plenty of room to grow now.
Well, I want to thank you for that praise, and I would note that a couple of the students from the culinary school actually have restaurant jobs now. The equipment that I financed has been put to good use, and they had one more request, a 3-compartment sink. A 3-compartment sink is part of the food handler's test, the function and how to do it. So I would volunteer the money from my capital construction to get a 3-compartment sink for them.
Thank you so, yes, because we have several. We have 11 workplaces, and
Yeah.
4 of them are restaurants. And several of them have hired our students after they graduate, so that they have something to do and look forward to.
It's a good program that has a good outcome.
Well,
And
let me,
a lot of cookies too, I understand.
let me interject one thing is, the board and superintendent and everyone has really got behind the project, but who we want to really give thanks and credit to is Ms. Scallion, our finance officer, because I can tell you that the effort she put into making sure that we could fund this project. And I said we can't do it because of policy, but truthfully, we ought to name the complex after, because she really went above and beyond the call of duty to find the money to really do the facility. And Ms. Jackson had supported, worked with her very closely, and I think you board members all know that it was a big item ticket number, but they came through for us, and I just want to make sure we recognize Rita for some way finding the money, and she should be complimented for that.
See, she's embarrassed to
Very good
death
job.
now, Mr. Walker.
And Dr. White, I have one more item real quick.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick, as the school board representative for the Okaloosa County Okaloosa School Foundation, I'm pleased to announce that this Friday at Silver Sands, we'll be finally doing the groundbreaking for the Growth House. $123,000 of that construction was through grants and Impact 100. Is Mr. Kelly still here? Hold up real quick. Motorola is also going to provide a grant for has provided a grant for $5,000, and will be there at Fort Walton Beach High School on Friday morning to give them a check. Hill Kelly Dodge Pensacola has awarded 2 500 grants to our teachers in the last week, and the foundation also received its first payment of $45,000 matching funds from the state legislature, which is the benefit of having the foundation. So, Mr. Kelly.
A minor clarification, he said groundbreaking. Friday.
Oh, it's already, yeah, it was the ribbon cutting.
The ribbon cutting. I was out there today with Mr. Williams and all the electric, the fish. It's state of the art. The Master Gardeners Club through the University of Florida, IFAS, has donated 1,000 plants. We've built some exterior things that weren't really part of the grant, but once we got into it, and I want to say thanks to Melissa Thrush. She was the one that came to John and I a few years ago and said, you know, there's this grant program, and kind of caused us, and Mr. Williams and I sat down and hammered it out, and we came up with this winning grant. So I really encourage you, because the ultimate goal of having those special needs students interact with the public so that they have socialization skills for when they transition out of the school district. This facility, I just am blown away at what we got with the money, and it's just going to be a great thing for those students and the community.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
That's it.
All right, Mr. Bryant. All right, Ms. Thrush, you ma'am.
Well, I would just, again, like to thank Ms. Rickman and her staff for all that they do for their students at Richburg, and Mr. Williams at Silver Sands, and thank you for sharing some of the fruits of your students' labor tonight. I also wanted to congratulate Indira Mishra. She is a senior at Niceville High School and has been named one of the 2019 National Merit Scholarship finalists out of millions of high school juniors who apply for this status. She was one of approximately 16,000 who was selected as a semifinalist, so we wish her best of luck as she continues on in that national merit process. I also wanted to thank Ms. Branscombe, who was here earlier this evening, along with our community partners, the Building Industry Association, and local builders, Randy Wise of Randy Wise Home, and Marion Skalicki with Ruckel Properties for their efforts in helping us open our new construction program at Laurel Hill School. So again, we've had numerous accolades to these various programs we're able to offer our students tonight, starting off with Mr. Garriga and all that, how he has been so instrumental in our aerospace program, both in Crestview and at Choctaw. And then to have this opportunity at our Baker School, Crestview High School, and Laurel Hill School. Great opportunity for students. So many choices, and very thankful that we have the level of instructors that we have to provide these opportunities to them. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Thrush. Mr. Destin.
Chairman, Ms. Thrush and I talked about putting covers on portables that service the ESE kids at the budget process. Under the last meeting, neither one of us made a motion because we didn't want to gum up that works.
Right.
But at this time, I'd like to ask Rita to bring back a budget amendment that would direct $100,000 from the capital fund to at least start putting those covers on those ESE portables. I suggested earlier that it perhaps could come from the new vehicle funds, but I will ask Ms. Jackson and her staff if they have a place they think would be more suitable to take that money from. I would be happy to include that in the motion. And I might as well make a motion on the request for Rita, because if there aren't 3 votes to do that, I don't want to waste her time. So
So that's your motion?
I'll make that in the form of a motion.
All right, looking for a second? Looking for-
I'll second it for discussion.
Second by Mr. Walker for discussion. All right, so now, table's open for discussion. Ms. Thrush.
Well, I would just like to say, I just had a conversation with Mr. Bolton this afternoon, and I would prefer, and rather than, I think at the last board meeting that this came up, I requested that superintendent and her staff have an opportunity to research ideas and whether, not just funding, but how we would actually implement the actual building of covered walkways. So I know Mr. Bolton explained to me some ideas that he had been in discussion with. I shared with him some more ideas that I had. So I would hate, in my opinion, to put a dollar figure on something that we haven't thoroughly vetted or researched. I'm in full agreement with you. I think it needs to be a high priority for us and want us to find the revenue to make it possible. But I hate to recommend a specific dollar amount without having a plan or strategy to make it possible. So I would like to have more information from the superintendent and her staff of a proposal of how they would propose providing these covered walkways to portables before we request that Ms. Scallon find the funds to do so.
Well, the only thing I'd say is I understand where you're coming from, but if we don't start somewhere, we never start. I doubt $100,000 would do it all, but it would be a start. And we'd actually be making progress, and that would be that many ESE kids that wouldn't be walking in the rain. So I'll leave the motion standing and we can vote on it.
So you're proposing an amendment then, or just leave it as it is?
Well, I mean, I think I already made my request, not in the form of a motion, at a previous school board meeting to have a proposal brought to the board's attention. So I'm going to leave it at that because I don't think it's necessary to turn my request into a motion at this time.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor then with a second. Any further discussion?
The only discussion was if you'd like to modify the motion to include bringing forth plan in addition to, the amount. As I say, if we don't actually make a motion, we don't get anything accomplished in any kind of a timely fashion. That's how the school board functions and makes a difference. If you want to have a date certain that they bring back a recommendation, and we'll toll the spending of the money until we have that recommendation, I just want us to take an official position that that's what we're going to do through a motion.
My concern is putting a dollar figure on it because the recommendation from the superintendent might be to put out a bid or to do some, I had suggested we collaboratively look at ways of providing labor for the coverings to be built. And so I don't want to hamper that ability that the superintendent might have in her proposal. So I certainly can commit to a date certain, as I would like to vote on it before I'm no longer on the board. But I don't want to have a dollar figure associated with it because, again, our current budget, we've already allocated, I believe, $25,000 to that project. And I don't recall off the top of my head if there was any previous funds that would be rolled forward for this current school year. And then not knowing what the proposal is, I hate to put a dollar figure on it. So I'll make an amendment to your motion to remove the request from Ms. Scallon to provide $100,000 in funding, but to request that by the second board meeting in October that we have a proposal from the superintendent in regards to how we can provide covered walkways to at a minimum, the schools that I mentioned, and I can share those again, but I basically selected the schools that have portables, that have ESE students. But in my discussion with Mr. Bolton today, I explained, I understand we wouldn't be able to just do covered walkways to just those portables because they might have a music portable or a gen ed portable right next door, and it wouldn't make sense to only do the covered walkway to the ESE portable. So it's
I'll accept that change in the motion.
Okay, so then,
Let me interject.
Sure.
Before we go with this, is I think it's very important, and absolutely we should have no children walking in the rain. But as Ms. Jackson mentioned just briefly very early in the meeting, is we all know what a terrible, terrible financial situation we're in. It's going to be worse next year. And Ms. Jackson mentioned, I hate to say this, even ESE kids, I'd rather them get a little damp than I had to know that we have air conditioners that's out at all these schools. And unfortunately, I hate to say that I would love to support it, but until with a shortage of money, I think that Ms. Jackson and her staff, truthfully, when I start looking at portables and the weather and all that, I mean, I just think that under the circumstances that I'd rather have air conditioning in one of our schools than I have to worry about a kid maybe getting a little down. And that's the only reason Mr. Dessa and I would not support it. I'm 100% for it, but with a shortage of money, unless Rita works some kind of miracle, I mean, I can't be designating $100,000 towards hoping that in the future we will have a sales tax. And we all know this, that the last sales tax we had, we got rid of 180 portables. And when you get rid of your portables, these ramps that you build to keep the kids out of the rain disappear. And I'm just pointing out, and I mean, that's a wonderful suggestion. I can sure understand you doing it, but that's the reason I can't support it, simply because of so many needs that I think really is more important this time, and that's, we all know one thing, is air conditioning in these schools. If they're out, they're nearly unbearable, and that's all I have to say.
Well, I would point out that the $100,000 has now come out of the motion.
right. So,
This
Tom
is a
Wonder,
motion
would you
for
mind
purpose.
restating your motion then, as it exists now? Okay?
Okay, I think the motion is that we're asking Ms. Jackson and her staff to bring back a suggestion with a number by the second meeting in October. And we are not telling Ms. Skylian to find the $100,000, although I support the air conditioners and we need them. There's a couple $100,000 in new vehicles in that budget, amongst some other things I could point out. And I would like to see all of that directed toward air conditioners, because I understand Choctaw is about on its last breath. We've all gotten emails, et cetera, from it that it's having problems. So, and we know if that one's not broken, another one will be soon.
So the 100,000's out. So
Right.
what we're basically voting on is a plan.
Exactly.
To come back to us, and that date again was October.
Second meeting in October, I believe.
Okay. All right.
And I do know that that has been being worked on. They've given me lots of information and data. There's some decisions to be made, the kind of material you would use, are we gonna make them so we can move them, or it's a lot. But I will speak with Mr. Bolton again in the morning. I know he has some preliminary information.
All right.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Unless there's any further discussion, we need to go ahead and vote. Not seeing any. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All opposed? All right, motion carries 4-1.
I think that'll do it for tonight, Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Destin. Mr. Walker, anything, sir?
The only thing is, I brought up the previous board meeting concerning the Community Affairs Department, and I'm moving away from it. Simply, Ms. Jackson made one minor change, which was by putting the assistant superintendent in charge immediately of the Community Affairs Department. But as you board members move on, I still believe that it needs to be looked at very closely, and I think it needs to be reorganized, and I'd just like to leave it to thoughts with you, because I won't be here, so I'm dropping the thing other than Mr. Kucheratos has been put in charge of that department, and I just think that it needs to be looked at very closely, and I think it can be reorganized in a way that we will not only save money, but do a better job. But other than that, I'm not making no motions to take the money or anything and whatever. So at this point in time, I think all of you received the notification that Mr. Kucheratos was now going to be immediately in charge of community affairs, and so let's hope some changes will be made. That's all.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Walker. All right, board members, now let's move down to section 17. Skip that one, go to down
Section 16.
16.
Public comment.
Now I see it. Thank you, Mr. Rush. Yeah, section 16, public comment. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to address the school board? Just one moment. Mr. Mitchell, come forward, please.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
That's what we have this
Now,
for.
it's 2 minutes, right?
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
In regards to the public records request information, I understand and certainly understand that you're looking to hire new people. Okay, got it. That may be a long-term solution. However, the lackadaisical attitude about a law being broken is stunning. Unfortunately, whether it's a manpower problem or not, when you commit a violation under section 119.10, there's a penalty for that. So for you all to continue dismissing it, saying, oh, we're getting manpower, I realize that. I would strongly suggest, okay, in fairness to Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Horton, and everybody, if it takes a couple of extra days to get a public records request back to somebody, send an email back and say, I'm working on it. But when you send it back and you send it back wrong, it's not just an excuse that, oh, we have a manpower problem. It's a violation of the law. And you can't keep dismissing that. Thank goodness nobody's made a complaint. But unfortunately, if somebody has a public records request violation, it won't be dismissed because of a manpower problem. It's a violation of the law, and it's not fair to the school board staff. So again, take into consideration, if it takes a little longer to get it back, take a little longer. Let the person asking for it know that you're going to take a little longer. But when you send it back right. Okay? The fact of not having manpower doesn't make up for sending something back wrong. You've had one confirmed public records violation. You heard of another one possibly tonight that just fell apart. Okay, nothing was done on that. I just again strongly urge you to take the time and get it done right, because you got to remember it's a violation of the law, and it's not, I'm sorry, is an excuse. No manpower is an excuse, and excuses don't matter. I said this a couple of months ago. If you go out here and you run this red light and the deputy pulls you over saying, I'm sorry, you're still going to get a ticket. Okay? It's an excuse. That's all. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mitchell, would you take a blue card, sir, please, and
Yep,
fill that out for us
absolutely.
for the record? And is there anyone else? I think there is. Yes, ma'am. Please come forward. And would you state your name again? I've forgotten.
My name is Sarah Burks.
Yes,
I am
that's
Owen
right. I
Burks'
remember
mother. My question is, and I've read this policy as soon as it was publicly posted, is there anything, from my understanding of how the school board works, is that now this will be on a public hearing at the next meeting? Is that accurate?
That's correct. Well,
This is the public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
the board's action tonight authorized us to advertise the public hearing. That has to run for a 28-day window. Then we'll schedule the public hearing. So it's typically going to be a month or more out, because we have to get to a meeting to have the public hearing. Then the board can vote at that meeting to adopt the policy, because it was not a basis to bring it forward tonight as
Right.
an emergency. So it's got to go through their standard
If I could
process.
attempt
that was my
There you
request
go.
for clarification.
Yeah, it was not adopted tonight. All the board did was to approve it being advertised to be considered for adoption.
Which,
Will be
in my opinion,
about-
should have happened in July, if not earlier, because this has been brought to the attention the appropriate way. And I think as a parent, I was misdirected numerous times.
Could you
So-
speak to that just for a moment? When you say misdirected, now, I remember you spoke to the school board.
In July.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And prior to that, I had reached out to several members of the district who.
Yes, ma'am.
It was a very cyclical conversation every time because it was that the school board can't go against, or the school officials can't go against what the school board policy is, but I mean, there was no definitive
understand.
direction as to, well, Ms. Burks, this is what you can do to amend that or to, you know.
Okay.
Appeal. Because until my son, you know, came and spoke to you guys, it was almost as if I hadn't been here in July. You guys didn't really hear what I had to say until a 14-year-old came to speak to you, which I'm very thankful for. It's just a little unnerving as a parent because now, you know, what we've been advocating for may or may not come to fruition, which I certainly pray and hope for the sake of other children in extenuating circumstances that it does, because you guys are here to serve the students and you're here to serve the public, and I'm here to serve my family.
Sure.
But if we don't advocate for our students, what else can we advocate for?
All right, Ms. Burks, thank you. That's 2 minutes, ma'am. All right. Oh, Ms. Burks, I'm sorry. There's a blue card, if you wouldn't mind filling out for us again. Thank you. All right, as board members, Mr. Attorney, Superintendent, any further business? Y'all all good? All right. Meeting's adjourned.